Gundam.tk presents Crossbone Gundam X3. Hey, what's up again everybody? Robert184 Gundam.tk, and I'm here with a very rare toy review of the Crossbone Gundam X3 from Robot Damacy. It's a very cool looking toy so far, but what about the final verdict? Stay tuned to find out. Here's a shot of the 1/100th Crossbone Gundam. Of course, this is the full cloth version, just without the full armor on. And here we have the X3. And you really get the toy effect of it, mostly just because of its size and simplicity. But overall, the posability, I've got to give the edge to the X3, and also the win in solidity. But for looks, I sort of got to go with the master grade. So there's a lot of things that I as a modeler have to get used to, like these hands, they actually move here, but they're not supposed to move too much. And if you move them too much, you notice that I'm getting little white stress lines there. So if I try to move this to get the weapons inside, I wonder how long those fingers are going to stay intact. In terms of ground posability, even before I try to put him up in the air, I have to say that this guy's pretty awesome. The feet have not caused as much problems as I expected, and the fact that the legs have a massive amount of mobility forward and back, including things like this knee popping out of the way. Once you figure out how to put the weapons in hand, it's not too hard. You just sort of pop them in, and hopefully those stress marks won't get any worse. But you can pull off some pretty cool poses with this, from what I've seen so far. Of course, the X-shaped thrusters on the back really do add something to the overall effect. And some of these poses, depending on the angle that you look at it, can be pretty cool. Again, it's just a matter of getting those tricky feet into position. If there's anybody who could do backwards beam sabers there in hand, I'm sure it would be Tobia. But then again, when you've got the awesome power of the Muramasa Blaster, I don't know how often you're going to actually use these beam sabers. Some of these poses just cry out for an action base, which I don't have. I'm going to have to try the Gundam one out here. So it's good to see that you don't have to necessarily buy a Robot Damacy action base. You can use this one, although this is hexagonal and most of the Gundam ones are round. But anyway, it's still going to work, so unless you want to go buy a custom one, you'll be able to get by with the bases, action bases that you already have. Here's something that Quattro never taught Camille, that's for sure. If you'll notice, you can take the blades, the knives, and stick them in the bottom of the feet, which played a pretty large role in the actual manga itself, besides the fact that it just looks awesome. It's the Muramasa Blaster though that's the winner here for the X3, and of course I prefer to put in the 14, but even just the 7 still looks pretty awesome, and when you combine it with the posability, no problems with weight so far, and it's getting easier and easier to put the weapons into the hand, so no complaints whatsoever with the way that looks. Oh, and what a difference a $2 lining marker makes for the sword. But of course, the pilot Tobia Aeronax, once you give him his full weapons, is there a cooler beam saber in all of Gundam? I don't think so. If you can think of one, please write a comment down below. I've swapped off the faceplates here, or with the head, which means that we have the open faceplate, and when you put on everything, then you can start to get a little bit of weight issues, but you can defeat that just depending on the way that you position the arm. When you're swapping the manipulators on and off, you're just going to have to do a pop to get them off. The only thing is, with the head you can have a little bit of problems because it's on sort of just a long peg, and when you take that peg out, when you take the head off, it can pop the peg out as well. So then you might have to use some sort of pliers or something to pop it out and switch the heads off. With intelligent posing here of the arm though, you can defeat most of those weight issues, although those wrists are looking pretty weak as they collapse there. The waist unit has some surprisingly good articulation as you're able to bend this forward, and you can see the joints attached in there, and you're able to bend it this far backwards. So if he's leaping forward all of a sudden, that looks pretty good. The only thing I don't really like is the fact that they've got all that writing on there, made in China, etc. Alright, so let's wrap up with a look at some of the good and the bad things about this kit. The first thing that I have to say on the negative front is the price. 3,000 yen. You can get some pretty cool models for that. And at the end of the day, what is this? This is a 1/144th-ish kit. It's about 12.5 centimeters tall, so it's a little bit out of proportion, but it's still pretty small, and it's going to look good beside your high-grade 1/44th kits on your shelf, but don't expect this to stack up next to a 1/100th. Next up is the lack of lining, and my big complaint is on the sword. The sword sits in the front of the packaging, and anybody who's buying this can see that they put in black eyes on this skull, but they didn't put any on here. Of course, anybody who's modeling, you can just take your lining marker, and this is the best $2 you're ever going to spend. Anyway, moving on. Sometimes the feet can be a little bit tricky down here, just getting them to line up, but on the other hand, you do get a lot of posability, and nothing has pulled off that the slashing knife foot as well as this toy does, so I'm quite impressed with that. It's just a little bit tricky to get the flat feet. You got to be careful with that. Other things like the head swapping. When you take this head off, sometimes you'll pull the peg out and then you got to fiddle around with that to get that off. And one final thing, this is just my own personal thing, what if they had included a chain? Because they do a good job of giving you all sorts of extra weapons, but am I getting this wrong, or was it the X3 that threw the sword? Anyway, if they had a chain and a plastic display case where you could have this sword extended and just attached to his arm, I think that would be pretty awesome. But that's about it for my negatives about this, besides the big one of the price. So moving on to look at some of the pluses, and there are quite a few of them, starting with the fact that you're going to get the extra head, and you're going to get the extra weapons, including the beam sabers, etc. But where it really wins is on the posability. And like I said, the knife foot pose, this thing pulls it off so well. Of course, it's not in that pose now, and this pose is sort of lame. But I'm really quite happy with the way that you can move this around, and especially with the legs. And compared to a model, it just feels solid, which comes back to the way that they manufacture Robot Damacy with their various kinds of plastics, etc. Everything goes together well, and it's posable and it's solid, especially compared to the Master Grade. Because Katoki Hajime makes some awesome mecha designs, but usually his models, and I'm looking at the Master Grade V, the Master Grade Crossbone, etc., they just have so many gimmicks built into them. And of course, as a transforming Gundam in the V's case, that's, you know, there's nothing you can really do about it. But it's not solid. And the Master Grade Crossbone Gundam, the things on the back, they will fall down all the time. The arms, the legs, nothing will stay in place the way you do it. Now this was a refreshing breath of fresh air in comparison. Next up though, the real winner is the Muramasa Blaster. And I didn't show it in blaster mode, but anyway, it looks alright when you use it as a gun. But more importantly, when it's like this, it just looks fantastic. And the fact that they give you this extra large beam to put on the end is just sort of the icing on the cake. And I am going to go try that on the Master Grade model, and hopefully it works. Now, I mentioned before that there was a little bit of a lack of lining on this, and you know, that's sort of your mileage may vary, and you can choose, but I also like the clean effect. They got all the main color wraps, and that's the most important thing, so the fact that they didn't put in lining all over the place is always something that is probably a better thing, because you can choose to add it if you want, but for those people that want a clean effect, you can still keep it. Now, the final question is, should you be buying this? Now, for me, at 3,000 yen, I would probably go and buy a model with that money myself. That being said, if you're into toys, I like it. It's posable, it's solid, it's fun, it's got a whole bunch of accessories and everything built into it. But the other thing, the other downside is that this is the Crossbone X3, and let's admit that's a pretty non-exciting Gundam in the grand scheme of the Gundam universe. Now, if you're a big fan of Crossbone Gundam and you've read it and you like Tobia and the full cloth is not enough for you, I like the X3, which is why I wanted to buy this, because I have the feeling we're not going to be getting that in model form. Is it worth the 3,000 yen for a 1/144th 12.5 centimeter figure? I think only if you're a big fan of the manga. This, however, is really a sort of open review, as it's my first toy review, and because I have no experience with the Robot Damacy line, etc., here's where I figure that you guys have probably bought quite a few of these figures. There's been some very interesting ones in the series. The series has gone from strength to strength, it seems, along the way. Outside of the fact that I didn't like the proportions of some of the 00 kits like Karadim and Arios, which sort of turned me off from the line in the first place. But what about you guys? Is the Crossbone Gundams, the X1 or the X3, are they good in this line? How do you like Robot Damacy altogether? How does it stack up compared to something like Mobile Suit in Action or GFF? Are you big fans, or is this a line that's probably going to go the way of the Dodo Bird pretty soon? Based on the fact that they put out so many releases from so many different animes, I think it's going to be here for a while. But then again, if they're getting into things like the X3, are they starting to scrape the bottom, or are they just going for every repaint and remold possibility that they can possibly get? Why don't you let me know, because I know very little about this and I'd love to hear what you would say down below. No, not quite.